Welcome back to the channel, BGMS Garage. We've got a new project today. So our previous video, we teamed up with AP Racing, the guys at Essex Products, to do brakes on the Clubsports. And today we have a set of Clubsport shocks from Motion Control Suspension. You can look at MCS's website. They have a lot of different applications, hundreds of different cars, applications, single adjustable, two-way, three-way. What we have here is actually a three-way shock specifically designed for the Gt4 Clubsport. These are three-way WR, so there's a remote reservoir, and this kit comes with everything. So the shocks that you see here, this is the front shock, this is the rear shock, and these are designed to go directly in the Gt4 Clubsport. Comes with all of the collars that you need, and when we reuse our existing spring packs for all four shocks and get these things installed, MCS also has this really cool tool you attach to the top of the reservoir. These are just filled with nitrogen. We have a nitrogen tank here for tires that we also use for the airlift on the car, and then you charge this right here, the external reservoir. You stick this on there and then you charge it up. This, I believe, was marked. I think these have 160 PSI in them, but we'll get a recommendation from MCS, and we're gonna shoot some video along the way, and then it'll be an interesting comparison. These cars come from the factory with KW shocks. Under a last inspection, we noticed the rear shocks in his car are actually weeping a little bit. We called KW to send these shocks back in, and quite honestly, thought that we probably needed to go a little bit different direction. Our experience with them wasn't the best, and just the general cost of these shocks that came on the car are pretty high. We've heard good things about MCS and thought we would give them a try. So, like I said, got a full kit here. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna measure the ride height on Jack's car, and then we'll use that as a reference. Once we take the shocks off, we'll kind of show you some pictures, make some video along the way, and then ultimately you will see a test at the track. So Jack's quickest time in the Clubsport is a 212-ish, 212.8 he says, and there's video of that on our YouTube channel. So among the top group of guys at the track. So it'll be interesting to see if we can pick up some time with these MCS coilovers. So we'll get after it. We've got the car up on the lift, and Jack is removing all four tires. We're gonna start on one side. You can see the measurements here. When the car was down and all the weight was on it, we actually took ride height measurements. We have bled the nitrogen out of the reservoirs on this one side, taking a measurement of all of them, and we will start the removal process.
Watch me fumble over a lug nut. All right, so we got all the, I said it. We got all the tires off the car, and we're just gonna show you real quick where these seals were leaking at. You can see all the gunk inside the wheel well here. Here's a look at the shocks. So that's originally all that leaking is what made us decide to get something new.
After we got the car up in the air, the first thing you want to do in order to get the shock down out through the shock tower, we have to remove the factory reservoir. So this is charged with nitrogen. This is how you get control of this is the high speed bump on this particular shock. This is the low speed bump. And so you just push on the Schrader valve up here. We checked it, the pressure. There's about 55 PSI in these, and they're actually supposed to be around 125 PSI as I recall. So definitely underfilled. So we'll bleed this out. I just use a little screwdriver to push the Schrader valve down, make sure there's no pressure left in it. And then the next step is we'll remove this from the top of the shock, then we'll move underneath.
The next step is removing the nut off the top of the shock, which takes a 19 millimeter. So just loosen it on up.
Hey, great work. So our next step here, we retrieved our tall jack stand. You need something to put underneath the suspension once you have the shock loose. And then, is that not the right size? It is. So you're gonna break these top 3 bolts loose that hold the coilover in. And you do not want to use an impact on these. They're not very tight, but if they've been on and off or someone's done a racetrack alignment, you know, they could be pretty snug, and you don't want to hit them with an impact. We actually had a shop do some work on my car and broke one of them off. And it's a pretty lengthy process to take the entire shock apart. You have to drive the old stud out. We were able to find studs on the internet to replace them, but it's much easier. Just be careful pulling them apart. And all you gotta do is loosen them all up a little bit, Jack, and then we'll go to the next step. But loosening them up here will definitely just making sure we don't break anything. You're not gonna see us use a lot of power tools on the channel when we work on cars. I'm not really a fan of using electric tools to take stuff apart and really at all putting it back together. So you'll see us use them putting lug nuts on, things like that. But when it comes to any of these suspension components, I think there's some value in actually feeling how that fastener feels while you're loosening it up without hitting it with an impact and potentially doing some damage to it. So the upper shock plate where Jack is working, that part alone from Porsche that the stud was broken in was $850 plus freight, plus all the other stuff they add onto them. So the studs we were able to find, they're about 10 bucks a piece. But if you didn't know any better, you know, you may end up breaking apart and having to go to Porsche to replace that entire panel on the top of that shock. So that top shock, there's a camber plate in there and some things that allow that shock to be offset to get a lot more camber than you would be able to get from a stock setup. Now that we got this thing up in the air, first thing we're gonna do is remove the lower sway bar link. And then there's a couple of fasteners that are holding the brake lines to the spindle. We'll get those out of the way so we have some slack in the brake lines, so we can basically, there's 2 fasteners that hold that shock into the spindle at the bottom. There's a top bolt which also holds on the top of the sway bar, and there's a bottom pinch bolt. So we will take those bolts out, and then it will allow us to drop the suspension down and simply slide that shock out of there. We'll take the rest of the bolts the rest of the way loose at the top, and then the coilover will come out of the car. So as you're doing this as well, take note of where your sway bar end link is located. There's actually 3 adjustments. We learned a few weeks ago while we had the cars up in the air, the closest hole, there's 3 holes. The closest hole is the stiffest setting on the suspension. The furthest hole back is the softest setting on the suspension. So we did a lot of work on my car. You can see the improvements in the lap times on our channel. You know, Jack is just a little better, a little more driver skill, a little less fear of the fast spots on the track. But the suspension adjustments that we made on my car definitely have helped. So we decided to put this first set of coilovers on his car, one, because he's the faster out of the 2 of us, and primarily because his car had the rear leaky shocks. So, all right, so Jack's checking out the tools. I figured I'd try to give you a little closer view in here of the next steps. It's a little difficult to see with the camera outside the wheel well. So right here is the top fastener that holds the pinch. As I said, that is attached to the sway bar end link. And then as you come around the back side here, right here is the other bolt. That's the other pinch position for the shock. So once those 2 are loose, then we set the control arm down on the jack stand, take the other shock bolts out of the top mount, and then the shock will slide out of the spindle.
Pretty much.
Do you want to say that again for the camera?
I wasn't listening. It's an 18. Being old has its advantages. Being what? Old has its advantages.
Huh?
And disadvantages.
That is, both are true. Another neat thing, when you buy one of these cars, you register each of the models with Porsche North America. They give you access to all of the technical data for the car. So you have access to all the parts manuals, all the service manuals. So you have all these disassembly procedures, all the torque specs for each of the parts that you put back on. It's really been a neat experience. I'm, not a Porsche guy, so it's been a neat experience having these cars and having access to some of the information as an owner that you get access to from Porsche North America. All right, so we got our jack stand in position, and he's taken the top fastener apart. You can see on the shock body that thing's already dropped down about 2 inches, 50 millimeters. So we made sure we have our safety in place so we don't bang the suspension down. It wouldn't hurt the suspension, but you got to be careful when you're lowering this stuff down that you don't get past the extension point of the brake lines or anything like that. You just don't want to cause damage to something. As you can imagine, the parts on these cars are very, very expensive, so we're really careful when we're taking these things apart. You got to be careful where you jack them up and everything else too, so. Then when you get that loose jack, you can just slide that bolt completely out of there. And if for some reason your shock doesn't move freely in and out of there, yeah, you may have to pry the pinch points open just a little bit, but ours looked like it was going to slide all on its own, so should be in good shape. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back up top, and we're going to take those bolts the rest of the way loose on the shocks, and then the coilover, we should be able to lower the suspension down and slide that sucker out of there. All right, so take your wrench on the top and get those 3 nuts the rest of the way loose, and that coilover should be loose.
Okay.
All 3 are loose?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Alright, try to slide that thing down now. You should be able to push down, the shock should come out of the still got something holding it. Alright, so we raised the car up a little bit. We're able to drop the suspension down. I stopped the camera. Not realizing how far we were going to go, but I stopped the camera. Anyway, we raised the car up enough that you can slide the coilover out, so you can see Jack's got that in his hand here. And then we will get some zip ties just to temporarily secure that spindle in place. So you really have to be careful when you're pulling it apart not to get it to the point where it's stressing the brake lines. Here, hand me this. So go down through the spindle and then just catch that little bracket right there. Just enough to hold it up. We got the stock front shock out of the Clubsport. We spent a little time kind of looking over the parts and the things we have. So overall, this shock builds up with all the factory parts. So this is the main spring that came off the Clubsport. This is the upper spring. There's I would call it an intermediate spring perch. And then the shock came with its own adapter collar that will go here. This is the upper part that goes into the spindle. Your 2 collars. So this is your lower spring support, which is this part right here. There's also, it appears to be a Torrington bearing in there, which makes it easier to adjust the shock. If you're not familiar, a Torrington bearing is a flat bearing that basically will make it easier to rotate this collar instead of having that force of that spring on it. If you've ever done coilovers on a car and you don't have the Torrington bearings there, it makes it really difficult to make an adjustment to the coilover without completely raising the car up and taking all the weight off the shock. So then this is the bottom locking collar that came with it. And a little bit of this will be us learning as we go. since we haven't done this particular application before, but this is also it looks like the upper hat for the shock. So we'll determine, I'm not sure if we have to use this part or not. We may end up using the existing part that's on there, and then we'll check out the bump stops that are inside the shock body as well. So one other big advantage to these things, the stock KW shock, your rebound adjustment is down here on the bottom, and it really makes it difficult when you've got a hot car off the track. And I guess you could argue you don't adjust the rebound that much, but when you've got a hot car off the track, this is on the bottom of the spindle right behind the brake duct, so you have to raise the car up, and it makes it difficult to reach up inside there and really get any sort of adjustment out of it. The MCS coilovers, the adjustment is on the top, so you'll actually just pull up the hood or open the deck lid, and then you'll be able to make your rebound adjustment right on the top of the shock on the track. It's a much nicer setup. And then your low speed and high speed bump are going to be right here on the top of the reservoir, which will determine if we can use the existing reservoir mounts that are in the car, or if we have to put these in another location. We can fabricate a mount if necessary, but I believe these will go right back in the factory location. So next thing we'll do is break this shock down. We'll take it over the bench and take it apart, and then clean up the springs and clean up the parts that we'll reuse. As I mentioned, watch that. It's fine, just let it sit down. It'll only go so far. As I mentioned, so we're gonna take this other shock apart. So the first thing we're gonna do is take this camber plate. I'm gonna try not to put my hands in the way, talk with my hands. We're gonna try to take the camber plate off the top. It's a T45, and we'll liberate all these shock parts from this shock from the top. Just support the back of that shock as you're taking those loose. You'll feel it, you'll see it start to drop down. And just make sure you're not wrenching on the, there you go, just hold it up. So we put it in the vise, holding it by that top plate to stop it from rotating, because you don't want to grab a hold of the shock. So the back section of the shock we had in the vise. If we need to hold the outside of it, there's a section where nothing goes on it. Just have to, we put a towel in there, but for this purpose we clamp the top of the shock to take these Torx bits out. There's 4 of them, or Torx bolts out. There's 4 of them that hold this top plate, and that thing will be loose once you get those bolts out too, Jack. Yeah. So I know I say you don't see us using impact tools, but for this, you know, it's probably fine to use the impact once you get them loose, broken loose, to take these things apart. It also just makes it extremely loud when you're shooting video to have it have the fans on in here, or have the tools, air tools or electric tools running. And you also want to take note of how that shock is oriented in that plate. So I did take pictures before we took the shock apart, so you can tell the orientation. The camber plate, which is this small square plate, see, it's all the way up. It basically has the maximum amount of camber that you can put in the car. There you have it. And here's the front shock. We've got the front shock all built up. A little bit of difference from the stack up perspective. This part of the shock up to here is the same. The top part has a camber plate on it that controls, you can't get, if you just mount this through the stock upper bushing like would come on a 718, you can't get as much camber as you can. So they use this plate to offset this mount point here so you can get more camber. So we're gonna slide this down through here. You gotta get it oriented properly, which we don't really know what that means until we get it in here and kind of start getting things bolted together. So we'll run this line down through. Jack, grab that bushing. So that little sleeve that slides in here. Yeah, so one other thing, there's a difference in the shock diameter between this shock and the shock that comes in the car. So there's a bushing that slips down in here like this, and obviously we need to make sure, feed that up through there. Obviously we need to make sure that goes through because it will be impossible to put through afterwards. All right, now let's see if we can lean this out and forward. Go ahead. Okay, that's good. Let's see if we can get this under here. All right, so the shock is bottomed out. I need to get this sleeve down.
Yeah. So we're gonna remove the lower ball joint bolt down here just to try and give us a little more clearance so we can tuck this up under here.
Oh,
Did it?
yep.
There we go.
Just loosening it apparently. So just snug it back up and then,
We can torque it later.
yep, we can torque it. We'll torque it back up.
Well, that worked out good.
Yeah. Yes, it did. Keep going, you got an inch plus to go. Okay.
More.
A little bit. Okay, should be good right there. All right, so that one is good.
We gotta put this back there.
What's that?
We gotta put this back there.
Yeah, that's next. So that's going to go through the top here, and then back through on the bottom. I just snug them up. That's one of those that we'll end up adjusting at the track. Oh no, that one we won't do. Good. Everyone's gonna be driving. Good enough for her score.
I ain't scared.
All right. Yeah. So if you look down through here, there's actually an opening.
Yeah.
So we probably can just pass
Push
up.
it.
We'll just try to
Push it
pass
up
it up
through.
through the opening and kind of go through that. Go from there.
Okay.
But I want to rotate the line around to the other side of the car.
Yeah. Opening right here. See what?
How much slack we have?
I mean, there's like
a
a
ton.
foot and a half sticking up out here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's put the canister on, kind of see where it sits, and then we can adjust how much we leave underneath here, because there's a pretty good place to zip tie the slack.
All right.
I think it'll sit like that.
Yeah.
This one you might want to zip tie, because I think it might slide on those. fittings, you think? Or you think it'll be okay? Yeah, I think we just leave a little bit of slack and zip tie this thing right here through this hole.
Okay. Where is it?
So there's an existing hole that obviously was for something on a street car.
Yeah.
And that way it's coming out straight in the middle and it's not touching anything. It looks pretty good. Make sure and leave your zip ties long enough so the next guy coming through cuts his hand on them. That's always important. All right, well, let's double check everything torque wise.
Okay.
We got to torque this, torque this bottom bolt, torque this one. We didn't touch the brake calipers, but we'll double check it and then torque this one on the bottom.
Yep.
And I think we're
be good
then.
All right.
So clearly we've moved to the back of the car. Same thing, we're gonna bleed the pressure out of here, push the Schrader valve down, and then we'll remove this one as well. And by we, I mean Jack. I'm trying not to get my hands dirty. His car, let him do the work.
Bleed that out.
If there's no pressure on it, then it's already empty. There's very little gas in them. So you should be good, yeah. When you take that loose on the top, just, you know, kind of do it gingerly, and then you'll see if any additional gas bleeds out of it. Other way. While he's in here taking this apart, you can see a lot of the same features that you would see on a street car. So the same 3.8 liter engine, 425 horsepower, and then similar computer transmission controller. We actually put air filters in this car, which they were in really bad shape. We hadn't checked them since we've had the car, which the car has about, what, 6,500 miles on it now? We purchased the car with 5,100 miles on it, and that other roughly 1,400 miles has been added 3.5 miles at a time on the track. So pretty neat how it's accumulated mileage just with us using it over the past, I guess about 6 months we've had this one. Then we just take a piece of masking tape and just mark the reservoirs of the location that they came off of on the car. So you can tell because of the hose length and things, but just so we make sure we keep track of where everything that was on the car came off. These shocks, once they're off the car, we will actually send them back to KW and have them rebuilt.
Disconnect the sway bar in the rear. So we're gonna start taking off a 10mm bolt down there. And then we move up here and take out the nut on this side. Right there. It's pretty hard to see, but it's back there. So get to work. We got out the lower pinch bolt, so we're gonna take out the top one now. Bend it. So this takes an 18, so does the lower one, and you gotta put a wrench on the back just to hold it in place so it doesn't spin, the back one. And it drops down like that as you loosen it up.
So go ahead and pause where you are. Let's let the car down and sit it on that.
Okay.
Just so in case that thing were to slide down. Right now we're going to go back up top and take the 3 bolts out at the top, and then that coilover should also slide out of there. Got the 3 bolts off the top of the shock. Jack's winning the Dirty Hand Award. He's definitely a little grimy underneath his car compared to what we would like it to be, but we'll clean that up. So we're going to raise the car up a little bit. And the shock is basically pinched right here in between these 2 things. So we're going to try to raise that up, lower the shock out of the mount in the top, and then this one also should slide back out. We're hoping, we haven't done this before as we've said, we're hoping that we can raise the car up enough and the suspension will droop enough to get that shock loose from the wheel well. We'll just have to see. Hopefully we don't have to remove anything else. So far we've taken the 2 pinch bolts off, and one of the pinch bolts is attached to the sway bar in the back. So that's all we've taken loose, then the 3 bolts at the top. So we'll raise this up a little bit and see if that shock will come out of there. So just kind of stabilize that as I bump it up, just to make sure that it doesn't fall. Okay. Now can we get it? Can you get it to go down at all? How far is it from coming out of the shock at the top? Oh, long way, 1.5 inches. So we're gonna have to get that suspension down. Can you push down on that rotor, that suspension? Will that go down any further?
Not really.
Right, so we're gonna have to probably figure out like what else we need to take loose to get that to travel enough. We need a little more clearance to get this shock out back here, so we've loosened up the axle nut, push the axle back a little bit, and then now we're going to take the rear toe link off, see if that lets us slide it down enough. That slide off of there, that toe link.
Yep.
Is there a shim in there? You know where it went? Okay. Move around.
It's coming out.
That about it?
Yeah.
Can you push it down anymore or not really? Is it enough to slide out? So let's take a small flathead in that little area. Just, you don't have to pry it much, just in here, just open it up a hair. Try to get that. What's that?
Do you think it's good?
I don't
Yeah, it keeps hitting that one.
Yeah.
Maybe turn
But
it.
right now, will the shock slide up at all? Like push it back up there?
Yeah.
Will the shock go up and out of the control arm or no? I don't know. Doesn't feel like it, does it? Okay. Put your eyes back there and just let it rest and see if there's anything else that it could be hitting on. Oh, here we need to. I bet we can get more out of it without that. Get a wrench and take the caliper loose and just take the caliper off and hang it. Then I think it'll come down some more. It's putting a lot of tension on that brake line.
Yeah.
So one more step, we're going to take the caliper loose. You can see the toe link we took loose right here. So there's quite a bit of pressure on that brake line. We want to make sure we don't damage anything.
About the same.
Well, these shocks. Boy, it is close, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's So I'm using two relatively soft hammers because you don't want to hammer on the end of this shaft because there's a nut that goes over it to secure it, and you don't want to damage the end of that nut. So I'm using two plastic dead blow hammers to knock this back through. Try to get it out and give us the clearance we need. Gosh, that's crazy that won't go. It is so close.
Yep.
Yeah, I just compressed it enough to come out. It still won't come out of the wheel well.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a pause here for a minute. Try to figure out what we need to do here. Well, when we left off, we had the rear suspension disassembled. We've taken our parts outside, we washed the spindle, got it cleaned up, and we disassembled the shock. So I'm going to run you through how these parts go together. So you have a bottom locking collar that's at the bottom of your stack, the lower spring perch. And when we disassembled this, I mentioned the Torrington bearing. So here's the Torrington bearing, flat bearing, two washers. This stacks up this way. On the Clubsport, there's actually two springs. There's a primary spring, intermediate, as we showed you yesterday, the top spring, the upper holder for the spring, and then this washer that goes in between. Then finally we have a pivot bearing. So this stuff all came off of our original shock absorber. We've taken it all off, cleaning it up, and then next we'll put the shock together. Well, after we had some discussion with MCS about our coilovers, we needed to get in some additional spacers. So there's a bushing. The difference in the shaft size between the MCS shocks and the original shocks that were on the car, haven't done a bunch of research into it. Apparently there's a little bit of a difference between the track days, the comps, and the MRs. And so MCS manufactures these bushings to offset the shafts. So we have those in now. We figured we would show you an example of our rear shock. This one is completely built up, ready to go back in the car. So we're gonna put it in the spindle, which Jack has cleaned up, and then we will start the reassembly process. Here's a quick shot of the spindle, the rear spindle, and then our new MCS coilover installed into it. We've got the pinch bolt in here. This bolt, the bolt goes through, and then the link bar to the sway bar connects at this point. So the other side's going to go much quicker. We kind of had to learn what we needed to take apart to get this out and put this assembly in. So we ended up taking apart a few more things that we didn't need to take apart, part of the learning process. So we are going to set this back in the car.
It's all right.
All right, so he's going to bring the spindle over here. This is the bottom bolt. The way these Porsches, the suspension goes on them, you basically have the bottom, the spindle attaches here. There's a triangulating arm that goes up to the front. Then this is your toe link right here. So he's going to lift it over here, and we're going to try to set her up in there. All right, so we got it up in there. A little bit of difficulty there. I'm gonna grab the jack. Inside joke. And then we need to jack that up. Then we'll push this up in there, get some nuts in it, then we can start putting everything back on. Okay, slowly. Hang on. Bump it up just a hair. Okay. Go down again. Okay.
More?
A little bit. A little bit. Okay, go ahead and go down about an inch. A little more. Okay, you're good right there. So what we're doing there is basically lining up the top hat, the 3 nuts on the top hat. So we've got it all lined up now. We'll start reassembling things, and then we will get the torque specs, make sure everything's properly torqued. And then this shock is different. The remote reservoir line actually comes from the bottom of the shock instead of the original shocks, which have the reservoir line on the top. This shock has the reservoir line on the bottom and has the rebound on the top, so it's going to make it much easier to make adjustments. We're just going to have to figure out where we're going to route this line into the inside of the car.
We put the thingamajiggy on the thingamajiggy.
The thingamabobby on the other thingy.
Thingamabobby on the thingamabob. This thingamabob.
So Jack, what progress have you made since our last installment?
Oh, we have been making tremendous progress. We put the caliper back on, and that's our tremendous progress we made.
New brake shoes.
Yes.
Baby needed shoes.
Yep.
The shoes probably had a little more life in them, but we figured while we had it all apart, we would go ahead and put shoes on it.
For the sway bar.
That one won't. We're gonna have to jack the suspension up. You want me to drop it down a little bit so you can put that on? I don't know if the sway bar will go on until we lower it down a little bit. There's a nut for the other side. Sure. We can check the other side.
Sure.
So one thing we try to do when we're doing new projects like this is make sure we only take one side apart. So if there's a question about something, you can always go to the other side and reference how it was originally. And that way we make sure we don't make any mistakes. Tell me when so you can flip that over the...
Okay, you're good.
Good? Don't forget your spacers before you put it on there.
Yeah. I'm just seeing if it'll go on there. Might need to go down a tiny bit.
Well, does it need to just rotate? See how it started to get resistance and then I stopped? So you just want to pull it down, and this is only set on 1, it'll go up to 3. You just want to, I just wanted to pull it down, make sure the splines are fully seated, so when we're compressing the suspension, it's not pushing on the gearbox at all. So, should be good right there. So obviously hard to see on camera, but he's putting on the end link for the sway bar.
So this part.
And the little nut.
Like this.
Yeah, so the cone, yes, correct.
The cone
The
goes
conical
in.
part in
Okay.
against the joint. All right, we put the car up in a little easier position to work, and he's going to put the brake duct. So that is a that directs airflow from the bottom of the car onto the back of the brakes to help cool the brakes down. I'm excited to see this thing rip with these on it.
See if it makes as big as a difference as they think.
Yeah.
2 seconds would be A lot.
2 seconds would definitely be a lot.
I think like if they're comparing that to a street car, I think definitely.
Oh yeah, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get more than 2 seconds out of an alignment.
Yeah. But I don't know about on a car like this making a 2 second difference.
We'll see.
Yeah. That'd be really impressed. I mean, if it made a 1 second difference, I'd be really impressed.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a break, figure out our torque specs, and then torque everything down, get some lunch, and we will be back shortly. So we've got to run the line from the reservoir here to the bottom of the shock, and that is going to require us to drill a hole. The stock shock, the line came out of the top and went to the reservoir. This one, the rebound is on the top, as I've mentioned, and the hose has to come through. So we've found a suitable location here. We're just going to use a step bit. I know roughly where I need to stop at, and we are going to drill a hole through. We've obviously made sure there's nothing on either side that's going to be in the way, so we kind of picked a suitable location, and we will have at it. So I've drilled that through. We've got just a grommet here. You slit these grommets so you can pass a line through it. After I've done that initial drill through, I just want to see if I've opened it up. Looks like we need a little more. You don't want to open up the hole too far. That obviously can cause you some issue. And you definitely want to put a grommet on this. You want to stop water from coming through, and any other issues that you might have. You will potentially drive this in the rain and the rest of the road grime. So I don't know if you can see that, how well you can see that on camera, but we drilled that hole, then we stuck a grommet in it. These are just grommets we have here. It's a 1-inch grommet, goes on a 7/8 hole, 0.875. So drilled it through, put the stock wiring harness back on, and we will make a slit in that and then run it through. There's a number of ways you could do this if you wanted to. This seems like the cleanest way for us, so that's what we're going to go with. I think that'll work pretty well. We get a zip tie, we'll attach it to that existing spot on the bracket.
Just started.
So this shock reservoir, as I mentioned, we've got it coming through the hole now, and then we're just kind of deciding where to route it at. This is a quick disconnect here. You have to make sure you have the pressure off the canister, and then you simply plug this back into here, and it will reconnect the shock like that, and then we will zip tie this stuff kind of in a place where it seems like it naturally will sort of sit, just so it doesn't bang around. But these were able to go back in the original holders, and then we'll put the rubber bands back on them to hold them. So overall, I think looks pretty good. Be a nice install. So we've got both ends done now, front and rear, everything put together, everything torqued. We do have to charge the reservoirs on the shock, put the knobs on for the rebound, and then do the initial setup. So MCS has a little card that comes with the shocks, tells you kind of where to start with, and then we'll go out on the track. We have records of where the old shocks are set, and just kind of feel it out from there. So we're really looking forward to this. Really nice setup, really impressed with the shock. Bang for the buck as far as the original KWs that are on the car. They're significantly cheaper, so reach out to us on our channel. You can reach us via email at bgmsgarage@gmail.com or message us on the channel, and we can set you up with a set of these coilovers, and actually anything else from MCS's line. We're now a dealer, so we can get you set up. We can facilitate installation, whether we do it ourselves, have some other shops we work with that be willing to do it. And next part of the video, you will see us out on the track, and we'll have Jack try these out. I'll probably end up driving too, just to feel them out, and go from there. Thanks for watching.